Welcome, everybody. So this is about the Conversation Project, which is really, we'll dig into it, but it's really just a place of talking about how we normalize conversations about death and think about how we'd like to have our own death. Just just show something very quickly to give you a flavor for this.
I think what we have really come to realize is that it is the ongoing conversation that matters most. Psychologically, it's somewhat attractive to say, oh, good, well, I filled out the form, it's done with, and now I don't have to worry about things anymore. But what we need to be able to do is when we find ourselves in those oftentimes difficult situations, we know how to bring our voice up. And we aren't doing it for the first time. I think as many people appreciate, we avoid it until we find ourselves in the ER or the ICU. And that is not a good place to figure out how first to have that conversation.
So that's really kind of what it gives a framework for what the Conversation Project is about. It's about being able to have comfortable and safe conversation about how we see our own death, but also how we see, the deaths of the people that we love, and what we can do to support them in that, so that they feel comfortable in asking for what they want and what they need as they move forward to the end of their life. For me, I started becoming, well, I sort of crystallized my thoughts around death when I was working as a journalist, and I did a story on the palliative care unit at St. Paul's and got to know one of the doctors there. His name was Dr. David Cool. And just working in or writing about the palliative care unit, I really started to see, just the power of death, and also the way that people wanted to be heard and be seen as they went through that process. And Dr. Cool wrote a book called What Dying People Want, based on the conversations that he had. And I think his lament in that was, that often what dying people want, they express in those last moments of their life, but they've wanted it for a long time. So that really had a fair amount of impact for me. And then later on, I discovered the Conversation Project, which we'll be talking about today. And excuse me, and it really took that and took and seized upon that idea that if we are able to sort of remove the stigma of conversation of death, normalize the stigma, and bring it to the kitchen table or wherever that may be, it will have tremendous power, not only for ourselves, but for our families and our loved ones. And I know for me at that point, I had aging parents, which I still do. And it was important for me to know what they wanted, not what I wanted for them, but what they wanted. It was funny. I had a friend of mine the other day called me, and he let me know that his sister had cancer for a long period of time and was now moving into palliative. And he saw where they were moving her in this hospice, and he felt badly, but she kept saying, I just wanted to make it easy for you. And he needed a way to turn it around to what do you want? And really, once they started to have that conversation, it wasn't that she wanted to die there. She really wanted to die at home. And what he needed to relate to her was, what I want is what you want and need. That's the best thing for me. And so that's really how those conversations seem to start. And I think that what I've seen about the Conversation Project is it does lead to those empowering and loving dialogues. And so that's really sort of the purpose, as you'll see. I'm going to talk to you a bit about where this project came from and really what the great resources are there to it that will enable you to have these kind of conversations with your family and your friends as you move along. So I just want to take a minute. Just before we launch into it, I do want you to take a minute just to think. I'm going to move you into very small groups of 3, and I'm going to give you just a minute to have these conversations. Share a time when you experienced a death, either personally or whether when you were working, and if the wishes of that person were known, Or share the experience of being a proxy who is someone who's supposed to be representing the needs of the person who is dying. Or a time when you were involved with someone who couldn't speak for themselves due to an accident or an illness. Just think about that for a second. I don't want you to spend a lot of time sharing. I just make sure that when you break out into the group, you give each person a minute or two, and I'll try to give you a cue as to what the minute or two is. And then we've had just someone coming in, so I'll give them a second. You're going to share your preferred name, and then one of these things. When you experienced a death, or when you supported someone in their dying, or when you saw somebody who couldn't speak for themselves, or if those don't work for you, just what interests you about this conversation. Okay, so I'm going to break you into groups of 3, and I'm going to give you about 4 minutes, and I'm going to and then I'm going to bring you back. So off you go. For those of you who don't know how to break out, you just kind of, you should see a cue on your screen. Well, welcome back, everybody. It's amazing how that works. It's folks feel like they might not be that comfortable talking about death and dying, and then they start, and sometimes it's hard to stop. So I hope that was valuable for you. I'm just going to give you a little bit of another.
And finally tonight, ABC News wants to join you in something right at the heart of the American family. How we can all help the people who care about us make decisions near the end of our lives. And 9 out of 10 of you have told us that we should all be talking about it at all ages, what we want. And yet only a fraction of us have done it. And we know it makes a huge difference in the health of the caregiver as well as those cared for. So ABC News has taken cameras inside a vital, loving family, part of a new community, deciding to have the conversation. This is 85-year-old Norb and his daughter Maureen.
My dad is 85 today. He's still very, very active. He's a wonderful friend.
Throughout life, daughter and father have always talked about everything, except one thing: how to control the end of your life in the same way you control the prime of your life. So dad and daughter gather the family together, 3 generations, for an act of love.
And so now we're just asking that you share some of your thoughts about what you would like at the end of your life, so that we can honor your wishes.
They are part of something new underway for families in America that says having the conversation is a gift parents and children give each other. And there's proof of the difference it makes. Studies show depression rates plummet after a loss if the families have had the conversation. Renowned physician Dr. Atul Gawande says doctors and nurses see it firsthand.
When you're there in that moment and you're talking to the family and you're saying, how much will it bother your father if he ends up this way? And they say, more often than not, I don't know. We never talked about it. That it is incredibly traumatic for the family, for the doctors involved. There's often conflict. It can tear families apart.
So Dr. Gawande has become part of a team led by Pulitzer Prize-winning writer Ellen Goodman. It is called the Conversation Project. It is a kind of guide for families looking for a way to begin.
If we give them a way to talk about it and give people something to hang on to when they're afraid to start this conversation, they can do it and pass it on.
Families like the Jennings. They looked over the conversation guide before they sat down together. First, there's laughter.
My golf swing's still good.
And then Dad directly eases his daughter's guilt and worry about having put their mother in hospice.
I felt like that meant we were giving up on Mom.
She was in a lot of pain, and I think it was handled real well.
And next, Maureen asks her dad for clarity on what he considers a good end to a great life.
So if you were in a condition where you couldn't make decisions for yourself, how extreme would you want us to take measures to save your life versus letting you go?
Well, I think I'm ready to go anytime. You know, I wouldn't prolong anything. I mean, I've lived a Great life. Pretty lucky. And because of you guys, you know. And
Unexpectedly, a grandson is inspired to speak up about his own wishes for his own life.
That if there was no meaningful communication, that I would want you to stop trying to intervene.
we aren't ready for you to go that soon.
Well, we're not ready for you to go that soon either, so.
And one by one, the others weigh in, all ages.
Don't do that.
Happy birthday, dear Grandma.
And with that, another family has joined a kind of estate planning for the heart.
Go!
The conversation beginning in America. So please tell us your stories in the days ahead about ways to begin the conversation with family members of all ages. Or if you don't want to have it, tell us about that too. My colleague and my friend, anchor Bill Ritter from WABC, and I will be reading your emails and looking at the great photos you're already sending us of your families. So go to abcnews.com, find the conversation and the guide, and we'll be seeing you right there.
So, and certainly the goal here isn't to get you to send your stories to ABC News, but that's just to give you a bit of a framing of what the Conversation Project is about. And clearly, every family isn't like the Jennings family. You know, everybody has a different, will have a different way of doing this, and maybe with a large family or with a small group or just with one or two people. And there's not a right way to do it. But really, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort of take you through, you know, what the rationale for this, but also what the resources that are available through this great project are, because the resources are pretty extensive. So it's, you know, it's become, it started out in the United States. It's become an international campaign to ensure that people's wishes around the end of life are understood and are respected. They talked about to the heart, and it really is about it. We can't plan for everything, but we can share what it feels like, and we can share what we worry about. And really, that's what our loved ones, what we need to share, and what our loved ones really feel about it. So, you know, we talk about, you may have been in the earlier sessions around an advanced care plan, and it's a great technical document. This is just a little more than that. This is about values and about what we want and what we worry about and what we want for ourselves and for our families. So talking is important. Listening really matters. I think that's you know, those of you who've been in sessions with me before, I tend to say listen more loudly than you speak. You know, you saw in that group, it's like the people are really hearing one another and really being, you know, and reacting to it, but then also saying, yeah, you know, I don't want you to die, and I understand that you're gonna, and I want to hear what that means. So really critical point of it. So I think that this one I struggled with a little bit when I first saw it, and when I think about it, it's you know, a good life ends in a great way. Instead of thinking about it as a good death, we think about it as a great life. And I think that's a really, and just in order to do that, you know, being willing to be clear and to be forthright and to have people support you right to the end of that great life. So I just want to take a little bit of time around just what what these resources are. The website it's called theconversationproject.com, and it has a real depth of resources on it. The Starting the Conversation Guide, which is something that if you wanted to do this, you could easily download, and it kind of walks you through the steps. So it allows you to say, what could we do? What are the questions I'd want to ask here? What are the things what does the conversation mean? And what kind of thoughts should I formulate before I start? And how do I enter this conversation? There's also some information about being a proxy or picking a proxy. A proxy is really someone who will represent your interests and your healthcare when you no longer can, who may be the person who talks to your doctors or talks to the in the emergency ward, or makes those, essentially makes those decisions that you've determined will need to be made. There's a guide to being one, there's a guide to choosing one. There's a guide to being able to, once you've had these conversations, how do you talk to your healthcare team? And I mean, it's a funny thing, because the business of healthcare is often in the business of saving lives. And sometimes these conversations are about not saving lives, and what I really want, in terms of, you heard him say, you know, and I know my dad will say, you know, I'm good to go. I've had a good life, and it will be okay with me. And sometimes those are hard conversations to have with people who are in the business of saving lives. So there's some help around that. There's also some fairly specific pieces around for people who are caregivers of people with Alzheimer's or other forms of dementia, and also with children and younger people who have serious illnesses, which are the same but sometimes much harder conversations. So, everything comes with these are all free, and they're all in multiple languages. There's also another piece around folks with serious illness, as well as being prepared in the time of COVID. I mean, we're in a different thing. And I think this is you know, if you're struggling with this, and it's really worthwhile to read the stories. There's the stories that are online, and I mean, they're not your stories, but I think or my stories, but they're stories that I think we can all see ourselves in. So it's a great tool just to be able to, and frankly, if you want to have these conversations, and your loved ones or members of your family or aren't quite comfortable, I think this is actually a really great place to point them to, is the stories, and ask them to look at some of those stories. But really, at the end of the day, the conversation will start with you. So we're gonna take a little time to start a conversation today. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna break back out into groups, small groups, and I'm gonna put a thought question out there for you. And please, sometimes these stories do become quite personal. The ask is that you don't share these stories. This is really going back to that listening piece. This is a listen quietly. You know, really acknowledge the stories that you hear. You'll be in small groups again, yeah, I think the others are just are really just the things about respect within a breakout group. So I'll just go to try to finish this sentence. What matters to me through the end of my life is. I want you to take a minute and think about that. I'll repeat it again. What matters to me through the end of my life is. Okay, maybe close your eyes. Just take a minute to think about it. Okay. Here's some examples. I wanted to say goodbye to everyone I loved, have one last look at the ocean, listen to some 90s music, and go. Having my sheets untucked around my feet. I love that one. Okay, has everybody got a thought? Now I'm just going to give you sort of 2 minutes each to share the thought with one another. I'm going to break you out into groups, and then we'll just, everybody good? Write it down if you like. Take 1 more minute. Okay. Here you go. Welcome back, everybody. Well, we won't have time for a report out, but I hope that was. I always know that, you know, if you come back when the time runs out, I've got you in mid conversation, and that's always a good thing. If you'd like to put any thoughts that you have in the chat, you're certainly welcome to. I will say, you know, my experience in this, the first time I did this, it's interesting. I did it at a very, very large event that was in a huge arena, and there were 1,000 people broken out into tables of 5 people each, and they all shared their stories in this process, and it's quite powerful. What was really interesting for me is I've done it I've been involved with it for a little while, and each time I do it, I seem to come to a different place. What's important for me seems to change somewhat. And I find that fascinating. So I'm going to take you through just briefly some of the other things that are in the guide that give you an idea of what you might see there. It kind of points you to those critical decisions so that you can, and it really, there's the nice thing about this is not wrong answers or right answers. This is how you feel and see this, you know. So in terms of do you put it in the hands of your health team, or do you have a really strong want to be in full control of that? Are you worried about not getting enough care? Or are you worried about that they'll do too much and more than you want or what that you need? It's and who do you want to who needs to be, who's important to this, and who would you feel comfortable talking to? Who should be part of your conversation? Oh, I'm sorry, I flipped one back. We'll go once more back. And where? And then really that this whole piece about it always seems too soon until it's too late. So this is all in the guide that you can walk through, and it basically say you're kind of making a commitment. When do you want to start this conversation? So and it really points to the question when to have the conversation. And I think that from the Conversation Project's point of view, there's no bad place, and really there are some very good places, at a very young age, and at regular milestones, not just when somebody gets sick, when death is imminent, or when we're at that later age of in our life, at major events, or obviously, when someone's diagnosed with a serious illness and it does become a little more imminent, more possible. So I think that what this kind of process that we're in today does is it kind of pushes us into, okay, you're going to go in a breakout room and you're going to talk about this stuff, but there's nobody in our lives who says, okay, you're in a break, we're going to put you into groups and you guys do this. We don't have those people in our lives. So sometimes it's the tricky thing, how do you start this conversation? So in the guide, there's a number of different things, that sort of ideas that you can use to start the conversation, just to get things going. And there's also a little bit of you might want to practice this, and this gives you some practice ideas.
Mom.
Dad.
Sweetie, can we talk?
Everyone, dies.
So, how do you want to go?
Do you have a plan for your end-of-life care? Because I don't.
Don't take this the wrong way, but you're not getting any younger.
So I was binge watching Game of Thrones, which reminded me that everybody dies.
Oh, you've heard of a birth plan, right? It's like that, only the opposite.
I need your help with something. Can we talk?
My biggest fear is losing you, and that I won't know how you want me to care for you toward the end.
Remember what happened to Aunt Maria? I don't want that to happen to you.
You've taken care of me your whole life. Now it's my turn to take care of you.
So there's a guide called What Matters to Me as well. This is really one it's about having, if there's a serious illness, it's a little more focused around that. It's a great guide. I just wanted to point it out because it does seem like sometimes that's when the conversations are the hardest. And I think that just as we end here, we've got a few minutes, and I just wanted I wanted to talk about the healthcare proxy. I think that I kind of liken it to we picking an executor for our estate, but it's much bigger than that. And I know that even picking an executor is really hard. You know, you don't want to offend anybody, but you want the right person, and a healthcare proxy it's a tricky one. You have to think about, how this will impact them and how it will impact you, but more importantly, how you'll get what you want. And there's a quick little video on this one, so I'm going to show you this last video just before we go.
Be your healthcare proxy? Like if you need someone to tell the doctor what to? I just go with whatever the doctors say. I wouldn't want to bother them. They're so busy. Doctors know best, right?
Be your healthcare proxy? Sure, I'd be happy to if I'm in town. Check out my Instagram pics from Peru. Wish you were here.
Oh, I could never let you go. I can't even throw a plant away. As long as it's got one little green leaf. I'd be like, can't we upload her to the cloud?
Well, heck yes. I've given this a lot of thought. Let me tell you what decisions you're best off going with. You never let them resuscitate you. And if they even try to hook you up to one of those breathing machines, never. I got this. I totally got this.
How can you even talk about this? I can't, okay? I just can't. Mom, it's not like you're gonna die. No, I can't talk right now.
Oh wait, did I show you that meme from iFunny? The cat and the dishwasher? Oh my gosh, okay. So the cat's like, bleh. And then he's like, wah! Oh wait, sorry, what?
Well, hon, you and I have been through so much together. Here's what we'll do. We'll sit down, we'll get a cup of coffee, and you tell me what matters to you.
Well, it wouldn't be easy. I mean, I'd be sad, but I'd have your back.
I remember when we went through this with Mom, we really spoke for her. So I think I can do that for you. Let's talk about what you would want.
Oh. So just some ideas, some other pieces, and we'll just kind of roll through this one. I think that this is an important one. We're just about done on time, but these conversations are to an end, so to speak. But there's also tremendous value in the conversations themselves. They strengthen relationships. They bring us together in a present place. And they're also often, I mean, you may have already seen that they don't have to be serious. They can be funny. So I'm just going to leave you with this last one. Just before we'll sort of end on this, but I know that Melissa put in the chat, theconversationproject.org, and where you can find it. It has all of these resources in it, and more. And if you ever wanted to do sessions around this kind of thing with a bigger group or with groups that you know about, you're certainly welcome to reach out to me or to the Conversation Project. I happen to be here, and to sort of host these kind of sessions. Always really happy to do it. So I'll come back briefly after this, but I know that we're at time, so I'll just kind of leave you with this.
My letter's called Don't Panic, It's Okay, a letter to my family. If you are faced with a decision that you're not ready for, it's okay. I'll try to let you know what I would want for various circumstances, but if you come to something we haven't anticipated, it's okay. And if you come to a decision point and what you decide results in my death, it's okay. You don't need to worry that you've caused my death. You haven't. I will die because of my illness or my body failing or whatever. You don't need to feel responsible. Forgiveness is not required. But if you feel bad, responsible, guilty, first of all, don't. And second of all, you are loved and forgiven. If you're faced with a snap decision, don't panic. Choose comfort. Choose home. Choose less intervention. Choose to be together at my side holding my hand, singing, laughing, loving, celebrating, and carrying on. I will keep loving you and watching you and being proud of you.
So, suggestions that you might want to pick up that guide. Think about some folks that you want to talk to, and see if a proxy is an idea. I know that I've done this stuff. If you want to if you want to email me on any of this stuff, you're welcome to. And theconversationproject.org is there. It's a great resource. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I'm really glad that you've come, and I hope you got something out of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you again.